This is Spectrum.
Alternative medicine, homeopathy, secret society, hypnosis, the paranormal, alternative energy, UFO, abduction, the weird, the wild, and the wonderful.
With your hosts, Tom Theophanis and Scott Jordan.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Spectrum Radio Network on BBS Radio 2. I'm Scott Jordan, and remember, there's no such thing as too much information. Joseph F. Marra is a doctor of nursing practice and had an established practice in Altoona, Pennsylvania, called the Urgent Care Center, until June 30th, 2011. Practicing traditional medicine in conjunction with more holistic approaches, Dr. Marra is also a hypnotherapist, a Reiki master, an intuitive healer, and a spiritual counselor. Basically, he offers a full range of healthcare modalities, addressing most health concerns, and has made it his mission to be of service to all, in areas of body, mind, and spirit, which translates to holistic healthcare. Gently raised as a Roman Catholic, he's always questioned religion and the tight box into which each individual is placed. In regards to religion, he considers himself a spiritual person without the confines of a specific denomination, as he remains open to his life's experiences and the road to enlightenment. Dr. Marra's teachings have been heard all over the globe on his Universal Talk radio show. He hosts many unconventional and informative guest speakers from the metaphysical, spiritual, and paranormal communities from all over the world. He does this to help us with connecting the dots to this puzzle we call life, or at least to paint a more complete picture of humanity's true potential. Let's welcome Joseph Marra. Hello, Joe. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
I'm glad to have you on the show.
Hey, I'm very pleased to be here.
Okay, I think we're probably going to talk about your history, what got you into where you are now, and it's a long, drawn-out, wonderful history that you had. First of all, let's talk about your interest in the medical field and how you got into that, and then we'll talk about how you changed your life to be more of a homeopathic healer and a natural healer.
Right. Yeah, since early on, I mean, this goes back to whenever I was a small child and my mother dragging me kicking and screaming to church, So I was born and raised a Roman Catholic, and I just never really bought into that. And, for those who are religious or in the Catholic religion, I mean, it does have its place, but it no longer suits me personally. So,
and even at an early age, you're saying that there was something about it that didn't resonate with you.
Exactly. I'm talking about early, like, say, 3, 4, and on.
Yeah, fun story I have is my mom, when I was really young, took me to Sunday school. And I waited till the person leading the class left and went to the washroom. And since we were in the basement of the church, they had those half windows, that are at ground level, and they have the well, the little well around them.
Yeah.
I crawled up on a table, opened the window, climbed out the window, and ran home. That was my very first Sunday school class.
You know what? That's so funny is I'm picturing that, but knowing as a child, you're still going to get heck when you get back, and plus they'll throw you back in the car and take you right back to where you were.
Yeah, well, I was so adamant about it. My mother realized, and she had known me long enough at that point to know that if Scott has decided he's not doing something, he's not doing it. It's the same sort of thing that happened a little bit later on, maybe 6 years after that, when I think it was about 6 or 7 when that happened. But when I was 12 or 13, the same thing happened. I was a high diver. I did diving competitions, and I just decided to quit one day. I'm like, okay, I know how to do that now. I'm done. And the coach came and knocked on the door of the house and said to my mom, your son's really good at this. I want him back on the team. And she said, okay, I'll tell him, But if Scott decides he's not doing something, he's done.
Oh, right.
And so that's just the way that went. I didn't have to go back, the long and short of it.
Awesome.
But you had the same sort of reflection and outlook even back then, and that, I guess that carried through your whole life.
Yeah, but my problem was my mother wouldn't take no for an answer on my end. I'd say I don't want to go, and of course, regardless, I was going one way or the other. So you were kind of lucky in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, my mother was a wise woman. I come to find out later on in life just how wise she was. And, you know, as you get older, reflecting back and having conversations with your mom, you're like, really? You really think about that? And that, you know, I never would have pegged my mom to have, you know, the spiritual outlook that lined up with me. And I mean, I was going out of my way not to talk about some of the stuff I thought about back then. Come to find out only later that she had the same sort of outlook. And I was like, wow.
You know, a similar thing happened to me with my mother. She had, how should I say, she would float out of her body as a child, and it was like she was conscious. You know, her body was in the bed, but she was actually floating down the stairs and then into the living room. And I didn't find this out until, in fact, it was only a couple of years ago she told me this.
Nah. So
shocked to hear that she's had these experiences, but she won't listen to a word I say. She's so devout in her religion, and she's afraid to go outside the box that, you know, she never told me till recently. She goes, oh, yeah, I used to do that. And I'm like, what? That's like a gift. Oh, my gosh, you can. She goes, I know I could do it today, but I'm afraid. So fear prevents her from doing it, and she's just afraid to lose herself or something like that is the best way that she could describe it to me.
And this maybe gets into the deeper subject of not the original purpose of the religions, but maybe the manufactured and manipulated purpose of religions, right, that they're sort of used as to build boxes around people.
Right. There's no doubt about it. With my research and all the years that I've spent with the various religions studying and the various people I've interviewed and talked to, I have no doubt that it was, or they have been put in place to control and to bat one religion against another, which kind of separates each of us, and it distracts you from the truth or from, you know, your path.
Okay. You know what? I knew this was going to happen from our previous chats, that we were just sort of wandering to various areas, you know, one-on-one chat. But let's get back to the history.
Right. Okay. When I was a child, and I always questioned the various teachings, and one of which was, you know, in the Catholic Church, they say if you're not born into the correct religion, which at that time was my belief of Catholicism, or at least that's what I was taught. If you're not born into that religion, and say you're born on the other side of the planet, and you're a baby, and you're unfortunate enough to be born in the wrong religion, in quotes, you go to hell, or you go to purgatory, or something like that. And I would always question these things, like, this doesn't make sense. This innocent baby is going to go to hell just because they were unfortunate enough to be born on the wrong side of the planet in the wrong religion. And the rebuttal was, you know, ignorance is no excuse. And I just could never wrap my head around this forgiving, loving God that would, you know, we're his children and we would be damned to hell for things like that. It just never made sense to me. So anyway, fast forwarding, I get through high school, then I start into college, and I'm in my associate degree. That was the first degree that I obtained, and I went to be an RN. And after I completed that, I got my bachelor's degree. And while I was in my bachelor's program, I had a near-death experience.
Okay. Well, let's go into that.
Okay.
What happened?
So, well, basically, a couple friends of mine and I were traveling, And we come around a sharp turn, and it was in the middle of winter. I think it was January of 1998, I believe it was. And January, February, but I think it was January. Anyway, we come around this turn, and it was slippy. And the next thing you know, my truck was going sideways, and it landed into this, quite frankly, the whole thing was miraculous. We ended up off the road. Somehow we jumped this ditch, this culvert that was around 5 feet deep. It had all this stone that was stacked up. And how we jumped over it, I don't know how to begin with. Then we went through this yard that was probably, 250 yards, 250 yards. And I remember time just all of a sudden in a snap of the fingers, just there was no time. And I remember heading for this solid block wall. And all I could think of was, I'm praying to God saying, please don't take my buddies that are with me. This isn't their fault. This is all me. I'm driving the vehicle. And also I'm like, I have a lot more to do here. I hope I don't have to check out. Please don't take me now. I got more to do. I got things I need to do here.
Okay.
And the next thing you know, we go through the solid block wall with my pickup truck, which was a Ford Ranger. It was a 97. It was only like a year old. And I can still remember, like right now I can smell the airbag and the cinder blocks. I can smell in the glass that shattered on us and everything. Anyway, we end up in this garage, and that impact, I truly believe, that was what I would consider a near-death experience, because of it wasn't the traditional type that people talk about where there's a light, there's a tunnel, and you meet people that are on the other side. Mm-hmm. I really believe there's two different types of near-death experiences in my own research, and the one is the traditional that we all know about. But there's another one, the one I experienced was an impact. And anytime you jar the body, the human body, it kind of resets the DNA, if you will. And it takes about 10 years for this reset to fully mature or change or transition. And that's what I really believe catapulted me into the direction and the openness and the trials and tribulations. There was a lot of that along the way also. And coming to terms with all the things that are going on the planet at the time that never made sense.
Right. You had like a body shock, an emotional and a body shock of a horrendous event happening, and nothing, and it's like you're completely out of control. You have no control in that situation whatsoever. It's up to the universe whether one thing's going to happen or another. And in that moment, you called out. You had like you said, time stopped. And you had that moment of reflection. First of all, and I think the most interesting thing is, the first thing you said was, you thought of others. Don't take my friends.
Yeah.
My fault. Don't take my friends. So instead of internally reflecting on yourself at that exact moment, the first thing you thought of was your friends.
Right. Yeah, I thought about that later, and it was odd to me because, the power of self-preservation is pretty strong in not just humanity, but in animals or anything else. So, but honestly, my first thought was, please don't, this isn't their fault. And again, time stopped, so.
You had all the time in the world.
Yeah, it just seemed like all these thoughts were coming through my head at one time. And knowing that you're traveling, like later on I thought of this, 200 to 250 yards, and before you impact, and all of a sudden all this information's going back and forth in your head. And to me, that would have been like a couple seconds of time, but it seemed to me that I got a lot accomplished, at least in my mind.
Yeah, everything goes into overdrive at that point. It's body shock, emotion shock, mental shock, and everything's on high alert, high overdrive, and you can get a lot done in just a few seconds. A lot of people have described these sorts of things. It's like, and they say it exactly like that. It's like time stopped.
Yeah.
Like the mother seeing her child pinned under a car.
Right.
She has no time to reflect on the fact that she's lifting up a 2,000-pound vehicle to get it off her child. Right. She's just living in the moment that that infinite moment of must save my child.
Right.
And whatever needs to be done is done.
Right.
And that sort of thing happens. Now, you all walked away from the wreck?
Yes.
But you walked away a different person.
Well, yeah. And it was amazing. If you think about miracles and how we view them, that was a miracle, because if you saw the pictures of this truck, first of all, the height where we were at, the header that goes across the beam should have taken our heads, all of us, off. And the cab was crushed down to the steering wheel. So, we crawled out of the windows, the side windows, and we were all fine. And not 100%. Like myself and the gentleman next to me was perfectly fine. And then the person on the far side had a broken wrist, and it was because he didn't have a seatbelt on, and he put his hand up to shield him, and he must have hit the windshield.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, a lot worse could have happened.
Oh my gosh, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying that he didn't have a seatbelt on, but that was I think we all did, but I don't know. I mean, to me, it's hard to imagine in that situation how he broke it. I just keep thinking he put his hand up, and maybe he did have a seatbelt on, but the windshield smashed regardless because of what we hit. So, at any rate, he broke his wrist.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
That sounds like a miracle. I've had several events in my life where the universe has been babysitting me, and I think it must have eventually just got tired of babysitting me all the time.
I can tell you other stories about the similar events, that like falling off of a barn roof doing construction, or
I have one of those. Yep.
Falling off a couple bucks high of scaffolding. Actually, I didn't fall; the whole thing fell, and the X brace was right at my throat. And I should have been. I landed on my knees, and to this day, I can't believe nothing happened. I mean, of course, it was in pain, and I was cursing and swearing at the time. But
I fell off the roof of a house.
Yeah.
While I was building it, we were working in construction. We were building houses, and we were hand bombing the rafters up, the roof trusses.
Right.
And you do it on timing. 1, 2, 3, push. Well, they said 1 and pushed.
Oh, gee.
And of course, you're only walking on a 2x4 on top.
Yeah, right.
Off I went.
Yep.
I got up and walked away. Absolutely no problem at all. I have no idea how I did that.
Yeah, I know, because when I was on the barn roof and I was there with my stepdad, we're building this thing, and I slipped, and I just started running because I had to run down the roof, and it had kind of a porch roof on it. And at the last second, it was almost like time stopped for me, and it gave me enough time to think, or else I just sped up my thought. And I had my nail bag on and everything, and as I'm running, I said to myself, if I try to stop at the last minute, I'm probably going to throw myself off and injure myself. But if I keep running, and then when I go to hit the ground, I'm pull like a Jackie Chan and,
roll. Yep.
Yeah, and it's exactly what I did. And as I did that, my speed square flew one way, my hammer the other, and my nail bag's up in the air. But I rolled out, and I stood up, and I'm checking myself, and my stepdad looks down and says, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I grabbed my stuff, back up the ladder, back on the roof. So,
yeah. I have a story like yours as well with the vehicle. We were going along, and it was raining, like pouring, and hit a corner and just kept going straight. And there was like a 4 or 5 foot gully where the end of the road goes down into a gully, and then a hill on the other side. And we buried that car right up to the front windshield in that hill.
Oh my God.
I mean, it stopped us dead. And so we went from 70 or 80 to 0.
Yeah.
And I had the car full. It was me, 3 other guys, and we buried that bad boy, just pushed the whole engine up and buried it because it was semi-soft. I didn't push it into our laps or anything, but it pushed it up and then crinkled the front of the car, and the front of the car took most of the hit, but we buried the thing into the hill right up to the windshield, and we all got up. Matter of fact, 2 guys in the back were asleep, and they didn't even wake up.
Oh, my God.
Well, of course, they were drunk. I mean,
yeah, I was just going to say, there's probably...
They were, in La La Land after, 15 Long Island iced teas. I think Mark woke up and went, what, huh? Oh, it's funny. But not a scratch. Nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing. Everybody's perfectly fine.
Awesome.
And how do you explain that? You just go, okay, and accept it and move on.
Right.
Like I say, the universe has been babysitting me a long time, and I'm sure by now I shouldn't take any chances because I think I've used up all the lives.
Yeah, you shouldn't test fate, I guess.
I'm going to be very careful for the rest of my life because I'm not sure that the universe would say, okay, I got you back. But maybe it would, but I'm not going to take any chances.
Well, it just goes to show you that behind the scenes, what goes on and must go on in order, because, simple physics tells you that some of these things just should be impossible, but they're not.
I actually fell down when I was 2. I found down the old fire escapes were steel stairs.
Yeah.
I started at the top and worked my way on a tumble wheel all the way down to the bottom.
Oh, my God.
And, of course, I had another situation where some guy picked up this huge boulder, and I was only 7, I think. Picked up a huge boulder, and he was like a teenager, and there was a frog on another boulder, and he was going to smash the one boulder down onto the frog and just, make it go splat.
Right.
And I reached over and grabbed the frog and threw it off the boulder, but then he came down on my hand.
Oh.
And my thumb, it hit my thumb because most of my hand was off the rock, but my thumb was from the pushing motion of pushing the frog off was still, and it came down. And my thumb swelled up. I kid you not. It must have been 2 inches round. It was just like a pulpy thing.
Yeah.
This is like a bubble, like a bubble sticking off my hand.
Oh, yeah, you had an effusion.
Yeah, and then the nail was history, right? So they took me to the emergency, took me in, and the doctor was like, I wanted to prepare my mom and dad, this might be unsalvageable if it's completely crushed, which it looks like it is. And they took me and did an x-ray and came out with a bewildered look on his face going, it's perfectly fine. Wow. There's nothing wrong with your son's bones in his hand. It's just he's just got swelling from the concussion.
Right.
Just all we can do is wrap it up and take him home. He'll be fine. He's going to lose the nail. The nail's mostly gone now as it is. And that was that. So, you have these sorts of events that happen repeatedly. And I've got a dozen stories like this, but let's carry on with your near-death experience. Seems we've had similar experiences in our life, to me.
Yeah, it's really weird. And as you're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember doing that too. But so to get back, the near-death experience thing, the basic thing I just wanted to get across is that I think that moment in time is what catapulted me into the past, 10 years plus, and got me through the DNA changes and therefore the everything else that's associated with DNA. We'll get into that later, but I really think that's what was a pivotal event in my life.
Okay, so that was a biggie. Now, did you sort of change direction in your medical outlook at that point?
Well,
that came later.
Yeah, that came later because I was in school for my RN to BSN at that time, and then thereafter I finished. I completed my BSN, and then I worked for a little while. What was going on at that particular time in my life in 2003? I graduated with my master's as a family nurse practitioner, and I started practicing, of course, right away. And it wasn't long before I started seeing patients that were coming in that were told by other practitioners, doctors, that they were actually crazy and they needed medication and they were bipolar or schizophrenic. And, some of the things that they were telling me, I perceived as gifts. And, I'll get into that here in a little bit, but it was shocking to me that right away the traditional medicine, at least the doctors who practice traditional medicine, I should say, they sold their patients out and said right away, like, okay, you have bipolar disorder and here's a medication. And later on, I want to just skip ahead because initially I was working for another physician. And, of course, he wanted me to build a practice within a practice. So I had patients that came to me, but it really wasn't my practice, so I couldn't do the alternative things that I would really like to do.
Right, okay.
So
you were, in that sense, you were sort of limited.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that was from 2003. I worked for him for almost 3 years, and then I opened my own practice in a small town. It was, and I called it the Urgent Care Center. And it turned out where I had 3 of them at one time. It became very, very busy. But the very first one that I had, a woman came in to me. She was a local teacher, and I don't want to say her name or anything like that, of course, because of confidentiality. But she came in to me and said, she was brand new to me. She said, I have this problem, and could you please just give me this medication? My physician's no longer seeing me, and I need this medicine. And I said, well, first of all, I need to know the history so I know that they have the correct diagnosis and that you're on the correct medicine. And she said, well, here's my pill bottle. Can you just please refill it? And so I looked at it, and it was an antipsychotic, antidepressant. And I says, okay, I know what this medicine is and what it's for, but for me just to give it to you and refill it, give me a little bit of history. And she was like, oh, God, I really don't want to, but okay. You're going to think I'm crazy anyway. So
she was embarrassed.
Yeah. And what happened was, I guess within her lifetime, she had experiences. And more recently, right before she came in to me, like probably a year before, I'll just kind of give you the scenario just to make it easier. She's sitting on her couch downstairs. Her husband's upstairs on his computer. And in a thought, she's like, I wonder what my husband's doing. In a thought, she's standing beside him looking and seeing what is on the computer and what he's into and that. And he comes down later and says, oh, hi, honey, how's it going? And she's like, what were you doing on this website? And, of course, he was like, what in the heck? How could you know that when you're down here? Well, to confirm what she was telling me, he came in, a visit later to confirm exactly what she was telling me. And some people might call it bilocation. Some people call it remote viewing. Regardless of whatever you're calling it, her consciousness left her physicalness and was standing, at least in her perception, right beside her husband. And she did this. That was only one example. She did this all the time. And she, like my mom, she was fearful of this. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control it and she'd fly out of her body and, she'd be in class teaching her students and the next thing you know, she wouldn't be there. So she knew that this medicine that she was put on before worked to kind of ground her. And that's why she was requesting it. And I was like, hey, well, let's talk a little more about this because I see this as a gift and maybe you could just learn to ground yourself and control this. And I see this as, wow, you could really do a lot with this. But she didn't want anything to do with it. She said, just give me the medicine. I'll take it once a day and I'll be perfectly fine. And sure enough, she came in for a follow-up visit a few weeks later and it was doing exactly what it had done for her in the past and it grounded her and she didn't have that gift anymore.
Okay, so it shut her off, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
Blocked her.
Yes, exactly. So the experiences that I've had with these medications, and I know you probably want to get into the pharmaceutical thing later, but with my personal experience, these antipsychotics and antidepressants, anti-anxiety, they do work for that very thing, but they also have issues where, like, for instance, a patient will be put on a particular medicine and they lose their inhibitions. Yeah, the depression's gone and so is the anxiety, but now they're having affairs on their their husband or their wife, or they're going up and racking up a credit card of $5,000, and it's just not them. And then who's held accountable for it but them? But really, was it their loss of inhibition, or was it the medication? And that is an argument that is rarely brought up. And I don't know if anybody even knows about this, but in my own personal experience, I've seen this.
Okay. So it would cause psychological changes because one tap is shut off, it expresses itself in another way.
Right.
And the medicine will make chemical changes.
Right.
Okay.
And it has to do with epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, all these things. And basically at a molecular level, it does change the biochemistry of the brain and therefore the body and the hormones and everything like that. But just to be brief, I mean, we can get into all that in a little bit. I know you want to talk about my history.
Right.
So at this point, I decided I wanted to go back for my doctorate because, quite frankly, all my patients were calling me that, and I said, I'm not a doctor, and, one of these days maybe I will go back for my doctorate. And, they want to know that you've reached the highest level of achievement within your discipline. Right. And so that's what I did. I did it for my own personal reasons, and I did it for my patients as well. And so I went back for what it's called a DNP, or a Doctor of Nursing Practice. And they teach you how to practice medicine with evidence-based medicine. And, we can get into that with the pharmaceutical companies as well, manipulating the numbers to make it look like it's something that it's not. And that's basically what you learn to read the research. And Joe Blow down the road tells you something. Is it accurate? Is it this accurate information? What's the statistical significance? What's the validity of these studies? Because, quite frankly, physicians will be there practicing day to day, and the drug reps will come in and they'll show you some glossies and say, hey, look, this so-and-so study showed this, and there's a positive outcome. But if you don't really look at the nuts and bolts of this study, maybe there was only 5 people, from the or in the study, and that's really not a valid study. If you have like 5,000 patients and it shows a positive outcome, now we're talking. But you also have to look at who funded the research, where was it done, and all this other stuff. And so basically that's what the Doctor of Nursing Practice gave me on top of the higher education and reaching my highest level of achievement. Okay.
So did you complete that?
I did. I did in what was that? December of 2010, I believe it was. But along the way, in fact, here's the thing. In 2008, which is 10 years after that 1998 wreck that I was talking about, I didn't put all this together till later, but it was January of 2008 when I decided to go back for my doctorate, which didn't start till August of 2008. I also decided to go into hypnotherapy. I also decided to go into Reiki energy, all at that January thing, or that January moment of 2008.
So and that was a big shift.
Yeah, right at that 10-year span or moment is when all of a sudden all these things started taking shape for me. And, just to give a little story, I don't know how much time you want to spend, but this is pretty cool. I'll try to make it brief. One of my physician buddies and I were working at a drug and alcohol rehab. And, he's a scientist the same as I am. I mean, all of my degrees, my associate, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate are all science, okay? So, you're taught that there has to be evidence. It has to be reproducible and all this stuff. Well, he was working in an ER 3 hours from where my one location is. And he was telling me, hey, we need to go on a road trip to get out of this town and just to chill. And I said, okay. He said, a few years ago, I was at this hospital in the ER, and a gentleman came in and he had a heart attack, and I sent him upstairs to the ICU. And I went upstairs later to check on him to see how he was doing, which is not typical, by the way. physicians in the ER, they usually do 12-hour shifts, like 7A to 7P. They do maybe 3 to 4 days a week. And, you know, when you're done, you're done. You don't go check on you.
Yeah, then they're exhausted, and then they go home, and they collapse.
Yes, and not only that, but the people that admit them, the physicians are either hospitalists that take over the care from the ER or the family physician. Because quite frankly, it's kind of double dipping. If you would admit all your patients that come into the ER to make more money, that's, you know, it's kind of double dipping. It's a no-no. So that's another reason why he wouldn't have done that. So it was weird to me that, first of all, he was drawn up there to check on this guy just to see how he was doing. So anyway, he goes up there, he walks in the room, and he's greeted by the gentleman's wife. And my friend is standing there at the doorway, and he just says, I just come up to see how you were doing. And the wife says, you know, you have a man standing next to you that looks like Colonel Sanders. And she starts telling my friend about all these things that no one could have ever known. And he was a rent-a-doc, if you want to, you know, a locum tenens. So he wasn't even from the area. So, in fact, he was from a different state. So how this woman knew all these things, of course, again, he's a scientist. He never believed in these things. She was so accurate that it just totally floored him. Then she starts talking about this little beagle dog that was around his legs, and she said, yeah, he died when you were around 12, and you buried him, and he really appreciated the words you said to him when he died with a car accident or I guess a car ran him over. And how she knew all this is even the name of the dog and the name of the person who was next to him, a grandfather figure. He was just floored. And so it stuck with him so much that years later, he'd suggested that him and I go up there and get a reading from this lady.
Okay.
Okay, so I called her up, and when I called her, she says, okay, well, if you want to make a couple hour deal, I guess is the way she would put it. And she was basically telling me during the phone call that we could get a reading from her and a treatment via Reiki energy, which I didn't really know what it was at the time, at the same time. And basically she would give him a reading while I was getting Reiki, and then we'd switch. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. That sounds pretty cool. And I had studied therapeutic touch in the past, and basically she was telling me it was similar to that. So we get on this track, and it's like a 3-hour track. We get up there. He's complaining of back pain the whole time. I mean, it was amazing. Like, he was like, oh, my God, I don't know what I did to my back. But when we pulled in, I looked at him. I said, look, we got to be stone-faced and go in there and, you know, let's just
the usual. Let's test the psychic to see if they really know.
Exactly. So here we are. We walk in, you know, all, you know, flat affect and everything, and try not to give anything up. And as soon as we walked through the door, the Reiki master looked at him and says, "Are you having back pain?" And we looked at each other, and it was like we tried to stay, you know, stone-faced. It was like it was just a shock.
Don't give it up. Don't give it away.
And we're like, why would you say that? And she come over to him and said, you have a hole in your aura, right? And before she had a chance to say right here, the psychic goes, yeah, right here. And she pointed and poked him in the back, right where his pain was, and he about jumped through the roof. And we were like, oh, my gosh, this is for real. Or you know, I didn't know what to think.
Okay, so, maintain scientific outlook. Maintain.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, you know, to my buddy, I'm like, hey, you go do the psychic thing. I'll do the Reiki, and then we'll switch. So I go into the Reiki room, and I lay on the table, and she just tells me to close my eyes and relax. And she puts her hands on me, starting from the head and working her way down. And she gets to my chest and sticks her hands on my chest. And it felt like she took two hot irons, and stuck them on my chest. And my one eye, of course, opens up, and I'm looking around going, is she putting irons on me, or is she putting her hands on a hot plate then on me? I just couldn't believe how hot her hands were. And sure enough, it was just her. It was the energy that was flowing through her. And by the time that she was done, and this took about a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, I was exhausted. I was parched. That she was like, here's a bottle of water. Make sure you drink lots of water. And I felt great, though. I felt like $1,000,000. I just felt a little bit tired, you know. So we switched, and I went into the psychic, and he went into the Reiki master. And I sat on the couch next to this woman, and again, the stone-faced, you know, didn't want to give anything up.
Yep.
Right away, she flails back in the couch as though she got hit in the chest and took this big gasp, like, you know. And she's like, oh, okay, honey, take it off, take it away. Okay, I get it. And she looks at me, she says, do you have a father figure that had a chest injury or an impact of some kind? And I was trying to be, you know, scientific, and I was just being quiet. She says, did your father cross over? And I said, no, my dad's still here. Well, what she didn't know, and what I wasn't going to give up until she gave me more information, was my stepdad had just died in December. He was walking across the road. It was a storm break. He was a lineman. He was there to fix the power lines in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And as he was walking across, some guy come up over the hill with an SUV and hit him head on. And so she, you know, it was a shock to me that she even come up with this information. I didn't give it up. I didn't tell anybody. So I was like, well, no, I didn't want to lie. So in my head, I'm saying, well, my biological dad's still here. So she says, no, it's a father figure. I'm telling you, and she just started giving me all this information. And then after a while, the tears just started welling up, because here he just died a month before, you know, and I couldn't hold it in. I just started, she was like dead on. He was saying that you were there and you guys worked together and on his house, and just everything she said was just dead on. I just couldn't believe it.
Okay.
So basically, at the end of this road trip that we took, I was floored by both the Reiki master and the psychic. And my buddy, of course, the same thing. She had told him things that she couldn't have known, the psychic. And then he left there. His back pain was totally gone, 100%.
Ah, okay. Wow.
So when we were going back home, we're comparing notes, going, I can't believe this. This is crazy. I mean, this is, you know, you don't learn about this. And again, when you see this in your family medicine practice or urgent care center, when it's sitting in front of you, what do you do with it? You can't tell everybody's crazy, you know? So you have to do the research on your own. And that's basically what this trek was. It was like, let's do our own research. Let's go up there and see if this is a bunch of BS or if this is some real stuff that's out there that we just don't know in science. Right. And basically that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, did that sort of switch your outlook or your life path?
Well, I got to tell you, I've always been open, like I said, and earlier on, I had done the research on, and I've actually in college had taken a class that was called alternative medicine, and it talked about the various therapies like therapeutic touch and hypnotherapy and all this stuff. So I was always into it, but that really made me a true believer. So yes, it was pivotal in my growth. And so I asked the Reiki master, I said, can I do this? I would love to offer this as an alternative or a complementary modality to my patients back home. And she says, yeah, you can do it. Anybody can do it. And so I got in contact with her later on, and I was so busy because I had all these practices and working 2 jobs and all that I couldn't drive 3 hours and spend 3 or 4 days doing this. So what I did was I paid her to come back to where I live, you know, a few weeks later and give me these, what they call attunements in Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and then later on, like a year later, I got Reiki 3. And these things are supposed to be done in a progression. You know, you do the Reiki 1, and because there's a lot of stuff that comes up when you do this. It's like house cleaning. Right. And then, you know, you go through the phase 1 and you start healing and you learn how to do it and you learn about all the chakras, the energy centers of the body. Then you go through Reiki 2 and then you become a Reiki master, which is Reiki 3. And so basically that in January, February of 2008, I started doing that. And then also I started taking an online course in hypnotherapy because I wanted to offer an alternative or complementary side to my practice. And once I started doing this, I thought, how in the heck am I going to be able to offer hypnotherapy and Reiki, or either one, when I'm seeing somebody every 10 to 15 minutes in my traditional practice.
Yeah, that's what makes it difficult, because it is sort of like a revolving door within the current medical system, that they'll come in, they'll see them, they give them a couple minutes of their time, and then a lot of times it ends with a prescription.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you introduce something that would take more time, given Reiki is a treatment that is you can't just do that in a couple minutes. And if you're going to offer hypnotherapy as well as the current medical paradigm, I can see the problem.
Yeah, so I think you may have mentioned synchronicity earlier. And that word came true to me that particular moment. In that thought that I had of how am I going to do this and this, a woman walks through my door, and it was the end of the day. It was the second to the last patient. I'm walking out with the chart to hand to my receptionist, and I could overhear this woman handing her card to my receptionist saying, I am a hypnotherapist, and I do things like smoking cessation. If your boss finds that this could be of benefit or he's open to it, he could refer these patients to me. And I turned around and I'm walking back the hall to see my last patient, and I had to stop dead in my tracks. And I mean, this is one of those epiphany type moments in your life that you never forget. I ran out to that lady before she got out the door, and I said, hey, do you have like 15 minutes? I have one more patient to see, and I can talk to you about this, and we can see what you have to offer and what we can do. And she says, yeah, sure. So she sat down. I ran back, and I was like, I don't even remember that last visit. I was so excited to talk to this lady. And so I saw the last patient, went out and talked to who became my really good friend, Terry Ippoletti. And we talked for like 4 or 5 hours. And all the questions I had, and here she'd been studying like hypnotherapy and Reiki. She happened to be a Reiki master and a hypnotherapist. I just couldn't believe it.
Wow. See, that's the synchronicity right there.
Yeah. So what you were saying earlier about synchronicity, that's it. So my building that I had, I didn't know what I was going to do with the other side of it. The half that I was using, I had like up to 5 to 7 exam rooms, depending on what time we're talking about. Because, early on I only used a few, but later on I had as many as 7 exam rooms. And that's busy. And I had over 6,000 patients, which is a very busy practice for one.
Whoa, that's huge.
Yeah. If you have like, say, 3,500 or more, you're pretty busy. So I had twice that. And anyway, I had that other half of the building. I always thought maybe I could put somebody in there to do herbs or something complimentary. And right away I said to her, I'm like, I'm going to have you, on the other side, you can do the hypnotherapy and the Reiki energy, and I'll offer this to my patients. So when they come through the door, if I do labs, x-rays, or if I diagnose them, I can say, okay, here's the thing. This is what you have. You can heal or you can fix it, however you want to look at it, through the traditional medicine or complementary medicine such as hypnotherapy or Reiki energy. And I got to tell you, more people were coming in to me saying, well, how can I do this naturally? Is there something I can do other than a pill? But on the flip side of that, there's other people, that would come in and say they had high cholesterol. And I said, look, all you have to do is lose a little bit of weight and watch your diet and exercise 20 minutes a day that breaks a sweat. And you know what? You probably won't even have to take this medicine. They're like, look, doc, I'm telling you right now, I'm lazy. I like my lifestyle. Just give me the pill. If I have to take one pill at night before I go to bed, I'm all about it. So there's 2 sides to the coin there. But my point was to offer my patients the option of doing traditional medicine, if that's what they believed in, or the complementary, which is the hypnotherapy, or what I found is energy medicine. I called it Reiki energy at first because that's all I knew, but later on I found out that anybody on this planet can practice energy healing. Every one of us has it in us. Everybody's,
everybody has the connection.
That's it. But, because we've been dumbed down, and we can get into all that later, but because we didn't believe in it, therefore it won't work, or we won't believe it'll work, because thought becomes reality. And if you don't think you can do it, then guess what? You can't. And that goes to the placebo effect.
I was going to say placebo, yep.
Yep.
Interesting. So that evolved, that did happen. You did put that in place, and from what you're saying, it worked out really well. You eventually, now of course I'm going to skip way ahead here, you eventually got rid of all your practices, moved to New Mexico, and followed your own thing. I mean, you sold your house, the whole bit. But there's an area between what you were doing there and what you're doing now. What happened for that evolution to occur?
Well, let me back up before we jump that far ahead, because this is really important. The hypnotherapist, the Reiki master that I hired, she, after talking with her and she got comfortable with me, so she was confiding in me about certain things that she could do. Like she would spontaneously channel and not even know it. Like, she was in the hospital for 3 days, and the next thing she remembered going in, and 3 days later she remembers them handing her a prescription, and she remembered the person that was beside her crying and saying, "Thank you, I know God sent you to me," and things like that. And then she could automatic write. Like, she would just kind of close her eyes half, and then just start writing, and all of a sudden something would come out of her that she'd never consciously knew about. So I said, "Wow, that's channeling. Do you know that you're a channeler?" And she goes, "Well, I don't really know anything." She knew about it, but she didn't know she was a channel. So this led to us channeling every day at lunchtime. That was my lunch break. And then a lot of times right after work. So 2-3 times a day, almost every day. It was so intriguing to me to find out what channeling was about, how it worked, can anybody do this, what information's coming through. And so a lot of the information that I got and the way I've changed my lifestyle came from that, as well as the hypnotherapy and the Reiki energy. And then it caused me to do further research, like travel to the East Ranch, where James Gilliland had seen all these UFOs and everybody that goes there. And I mean, I experienced them. I have it on film. I went to Cynthia Crawford's house, and she's the ET sculptor. And over Phoenix, I captured the Phoenix lights on my own camera. I saw them, and I saw a helicopter or a plane traveling around these things. I have it on, I have it.
Okay. So this, again, was all part of this is what I wanted to get to, the evolution. This is all just part of your evolution. You branching off into all of these areas, hypnotherapy, then
right.
Reiki, then, getting in touch with your higher self and sort of opening that door so more information can flow through. Right. Going to all of these people like James and Isetti, doing the Phoenix Light things. It's almost like an invisible hand is pushing you into all of these events synchronistically, so that you can be where you are now. And that's the interesting part of the story.
Right. But one more thing. Let me just add one more thing. After learning all this, and you know this yourself, your family, your friends, all of a sudden you have this new awareness, this new consciousness. You're out of the slumber. The blindfolds are off. You see things for what they truly are and what's been going on the planet. I needed a platform to speak and to get this information out of me and to help other people. So I created this radio talk show called Universal Talk. Yeah. And I started interviewing people all over the world. And I mean, I have thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have, and they're still coming to that site. I don't do it anymore, but I archived all the information so that people can see and do the research and listen to these people that are doctors, nurses, lawyers, FBI guys, and judges, and just everybody that was in the presidency and all this stuff. They work for the presidency, I should say. And so that is all part of my own journey, and it woke me up by interviewing all these people. Plus, I helped everybody else who came and watched the show or continue to come to the show. And then from that point, I just had this, I didn't like medicine the way it was, and I didn't know that I could help people anymore, or I just wanted to kind of get out of it. So from central Pennsylvania, where I had 3 of these offices at one time, I kind of went down to 1, And I closed it. I sold the building, sold my home, and was drawn, as you say, from the heart. I wanted to listen to my heart instead of my head. I wanted to listen to me instead of what everybody else thought I should do. And, you know, I headed out west. And like you said, I ended up in New Mexico. And for the past, since June 30th, I closed my office. And until just recently, the first part of March, I haven't done anything but further research and got online on YouTube and traveled New Mexico and went and...
You're going through a reabsorbing stage.
Yeah.
Because all that time talking to those people, traveling around, you were probably at that moment in time absorbing, because you were having amazing guests on your show. They were telling you things that you were probably going, really? Wow, that's cool. I'm going to have to process that. But then the next week you have another person on, and you go through the same process. Really? Wow, that's cool. I'm going to have to process that. Perhaps when moving to New Mexico was the absorption time.
Yeah, it definitely separated me from my the traditional medicine and doing even the alternative stuff because it was me time for a while, like you said. And so I actually had to sit in quietly and just kind of meditate on it and be like, okay, do I want to go back to traditional medicine? Can I still help people in that way? And what I came to was there are a lot of people on the planet that still are asleep or still believe in traditional medicine. They know that's not 100%, but they don't know of anything else. So to me, with the knowledge that I've gained, I felt that maybe I'll go back to medicine and try it and just work 1 or 2 days a week and kind of open some people's eyes as I did back home. And so that's what I started to do in March. I got a job here in New Mexico and at a clinic, like I said, 1 to 2 days a week. I don't plan on opening my own practice or anything. And it's amazing. Once the people start talking to you and you start to just speak your truth, you know, just the people in the office that I talk to want to bring their children to me outside of the office at my residence, which I have a Reiki room or an energy room that I developed, that I just created actually within the past week. And
awesome.
They want to try this stuff out. They've never heard of it, but they're so open to it. I mean, so many people are waking up and just being open. At least that's the biggest thing, is just to be open. Right.
And the more people are sort of open, and I think it's been stages, and I've also talked about this in the past on the show about these doorways that open cyclically. And they open, and then there's a big movement towards alternative thought, and then they sort of close down a little bit. Then they open back up again. One example I use is the 60s, and that's sort of the 60s movement, the peace movement. And then that was a big door that opened. A lot of people, you know, sort of went into the alternative outlook. And then, you know, it shut down, and all the wars and the Gulf War and all of the other stuff that's been happening all over the world, the economic crisis, I could go on and on and on, the manipulated events that have been happening, all of this stuff to sort of shut those doors as much as possible. But they had the reverse effect that people became so overwhelmed with all of those things happening, then the doors bust wide open again. And I would say September 11th to 2001, Twin Towers was a big event, and the economic crises. Then people turn to the alternative again because it's like they have nowhere else to go at that point.
Right.
It's like when crisis happens in your life and you have nowhere else to go, then is when you go, okay, there's got to be another way to do this.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I found out, and after all what we just talked about and leading up to this particular point, and the whole time I was looking for the truth. I just want the truth. Tell me the truth. And what I found was each individual person's truth is their own. And what I mean by that is, like last week, my truth is different than it is today because I have this new awareness or this new consciousness from talking to you or talking to somebody else that helps you raise in an awareness or a consciousness that that brings you to a higher state of understanding. And a lot of people on the planet don't see it that way. I mean, they think, and this was my thought initially, was that once I find the truth, I'm going to, get on the biggest mountain and just tell everybody, But what I found was there are some universal laws that we are governed by within the dimension that we exist. But ultimately, life doesn't happen to us. It happens from us. And again, thought becomes reality. What you put out is what you get back. And that's just simple law of attraction that I found out about within this journey.
Well, I definitely agree with that. And your evolution, I think, is reflective of a lot of people that have gone down the similar road. And they've had similar events. Now, the details might not be exactly the same.
Right.
The details will change. But they've had similar sort of awakenings. And I've met tons of people that have told me their stories. You have interviewed people on your radio show that have told you similar stories. It's,
right.
I used to believe this, then this event happened in my life, and it changed me a little bit, and this other event happened, and then it spun me around. And then the universe decided to hit me in the back of the head with a 2x4, and then they have these sort of roads that they go down that changes them as a person. Now,
right. Well,
and I think this happens to everybody, but then you also have the groups of people that are just they're still sort of plugging along. They
right.
get up in the morning, they go to work,
right.
they come home, they watch Dancing with the Stars. Yep. They go to bed on the weekends, they'll go out camping, you know what I mean? They have that sort of set thing, and that's all they need to deal with. Or if they're in the academic world, they'll have the academic
right.
thing that they do all day long. They have their weekends, and then they go back to work. So they're sort of still on the treadmill.
Well, and this is what I wanted to say about that was some people are right where they were, say, 10 years ago. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that they're in their own perfection. If that's their choice, we have free will here. And if that's where they want to stay, so be it. But to give you a good example, since I woke up, since I remembered who I was and the potential for humanity, people such as my family and my friends, but especially my mom, I'll give you a good example. She is so devout in her religious beliefs that she wants to stay there. And again, it's a sin if you go look outside the religion. So it's kind of that box we were talking about earlier. But, excuse me, she says, boy, I wish you would just come back to your religion. I really worry about you, and I don't want you to go to hell, and you're believing all these crazy things. And I said to her, Mom, look, let me just give you an example of how I feel. After everything that I've done and researched and experienced, I can't go back to that. And it's akin to you going back and believing in Santa Claus after you were done believing in Santa Claus. When someone told you he didn't exist and then consciously you knew that he didn't exist, I can't go back and believe in Santa Claus again simply because he doesn't exist to me anymore. And that's the same with religion. Mm-hmm. It helped me in my focus of prayer and other things. It brought me to where I am today. It was a part of me. So I'm not saying that everybody that's in religion, oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world, because it does have its place. But as you raise in consciousness, you got to spread your wings and keep going. You can't allow yourself to be limited within the box. And I know it's a fear factor thing. You'll go to hell. And I remember all those things that, you don't look outside your own religion, and you have to bring your brothers back to church, and all those things to keep control.
Yeah. Got to fill those donation boxes up, boys.
Yeah.
And with your radio show, you probably talk to people that have done some pretty in-depth research, alternative research on religion, on symbology, on archetypes, and these sorts of things that made you go, okay, well, that makes sense.
Right. And again, the radio show was putting the pieces to the puzzle that we call life together. And if anybody wants to go back, and I'm sure they could do the same thing with your radio shows too, you go back and you just listen from the beginning at all the archived people, and you'll have a new perspective when you come out of it at the end of the tunnel. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Okay, so that was some pretty massive changes leading up to where you are now. So what are you going to do now? You're going to be starting another radio show?
Yes. Now that I've gotten to this point in my life, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I'm just saying that I have awoken, and I can see things for what they are now and the truth in the matter. And I'm open to my own expression, and I'm open to still learning. I know that I haven't learned it all. So basically, for those people who are out there that are still searching, and I developed, or I don't want to say developed, I created a radio show called A Guiding Light, Lite. And I have a website that's aguidinglight.com, Lite. And for those who are interested in meditations or personal healings or angel card readings or anything like that, that's what I offer. And the radio shows will continue to interview various people, but excuse me, I'd like to go in the direction of the light. And I don't like to put out doom and gloom. So again, the newer radio show is not so much putting the pieces to the puzzle together, but once you have that, if you are looking for the next step in evolution.
Solution-based.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. I just need to get a drink, I think.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We'll go from, I'll say, solution-based after you come back.
Okay, give me 1 second here.
Yep, go for it. I'm running low on tea. Connor, can you make me tea? Go get the water going, and what I'll do is I'll hand you my teacup as soon as the water's full. I think that's a good plan.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Connor, did you have your mineral drink?
There's quite a bit of water left in there.
Okay, is it already hot, son?
No, it's left.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it's funny the the parallels in what you're doing. It's interesting.
Yeah.
David Corso, PIG Radio, Rebecca, Journeys with Rebecca.
I mean, I've been on Paranormal State. I mean, they called me and asked me to do a hypnotherapy session on it. Well, actually, what they said was
we're going to talk about that because that sounds sort of interesting, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm ready whenever you are.
So it's become more of a solution-based outlook of what you're doing. You know, before you're gathering all the information, having the various guests on that give the pieces to the puzzle, and you're still probably going to do that.
Right.
But maybe you focus more on what are the solutions, what are, sort of like your own version of Occupy Wall Street.
Yes, exactly.
What are the solutions?
Right. And, one of the things that I've learned is everything, the chair that you're sitting on, the trees, the earth, yourself, everything is energy. So what you put out is what you get back. So if I was to focus a radio show strictly on doom and gloom, not only would I attract that to myself, but the listeners, I would be part of the problem. So I'm not putting anybody down because, I had to listen to some of that to understand where we have been in our history to get to where we are today. But now I would like to raise the bar, raise the energy, and as you say, go in a solution type avenue.
Good. Okay, well that's great. Have you set it up? I mean, you're going to be doing your Reiki work.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be doing your radio show, and do you have it all set up? I mean, there'll be a link on? I'm going to put a link on your bio if it's all set up and ready to go. Is it going now?
Yeah, the website is up and running, and people call me, and they've been purchasing the the MP3s for the meditation. I do have a place here for doing the energy healing, the Reiki energy, and hypnotherapy if anybody is traveling through New Mexico. But also, I just created a PowerPoint presentation on, and it's probably going to be at least a half a day, if not a full day workshop. And I would like to offer, if there's anybody out there that has a little town that people are open to it, and if anybody wants to put something together, I would love to come to your town and speak about all this, and from where I was and where I am now and where we're going. And, I mean, a lot of this information, this is timely because this is the 2012 or the ascension process that everybody talks about, and there are going to be some major changes that are right before us. And depending how your perspective is and how you look at it is how you're going to get through it.
Right. So you want to put it out there and give your lectures. You already have a lecture up on YouTube. That'll be as part of your bio. It'll be, anybody can watch that. They can watch it as they can go to the upcoming guests area or the past guests the day after the show, and they can watch that lecture you did. That's on YouTube. I thought it was a brilliant lecture, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And one other thing I'd like to add is also on YouTube, Alfred Weber and I have done some free work for humanity, if you will, and raising your vibratory frequency, and a couple other ones we did. But if you YouTube either his name or mine or together, it's free. And we've had email after email coming to both of us, and if I get one, I send it to him, I forward it to him, and thanking us and how it made a difference in a person's life, or how it changed whether they were thinking of something or whether it was a healing thing. I mean, on and on. So I would definitely recommend it.
When's your radio show start? What's the first day?
The first day is April the 10th, I believe. It's a Sunday. So next Sunday. And it starts at 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. And it'll be live. Every Sunday at 7 I'll have them.
Every Sunday. So it'll be next April 8th.
Oh, 8th. I'm sorry. Yes.
It'll be April 8th at what time?
7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Mountain Standard Time.
Okay.
And if another thing that I forgot to mention is I was asked to be on ATW, which is a new university that's online, and there are teachers such as myself that will be there doing lectures through ATW. But ATW.radio, people can find the radio show and many others.
Okay, and you'll be part of, that's your radio show, ATW?
Yes.
Okay. ATW. What's that stand for?
Awakening Truth Worldwide.
Good name. I like it.
Yeah, and it's really helping. It's been around for a little bit, but just to get all the teachers and get all the software and everything together to really get this thing to go. Right now, this month, the first and second week here of April, it's really going to start taking off, and there's going to be all kinds of pay-per-views and various things and there's some free things on there as well, and then, like I said, the radio show. But I think you can sign up free just to get a membership to it.
Awesome. Okay. I'm just curious, all of these things that you're setting up now, do you see anything for like, where do you think you're going to be in 6 months? What's your feeling?
Oh, boy. You know what? I always like to bring it back to the now. This is something that I was taught from the channelings that I did. I always wanted to get to the finish line like today. And what was taught to me was you miss all the little important things along the way. So to look 6 months in advance, it's really hard for me right now because there's going to be so many changes that are going to happen with humanity, with the earth, with this ascension process. I don't have a clue of where I would be in 6 months. If you asked me that maybe 5 years ago, I could give you an estimate or something like that. But because,
you know what? That's a great answer. That's a great answer because it sort of tunes into some of the Mayan calendar stuff that when they talk about everything happening so quickly, you can't necessarily process it.
Right.
It's just happening. You're caught in the whirlpool.
Here's how I look at it. Like right now, I'm on the edge of my seat, and it's been like this for, I don't know, a month or so. And I've given predictions in the past that really come true. And so I don't want to say it on the air because I don't want to be, again, part of the problem. But I feel like once the first domino falls, and it's any minute, it's just like, I just know real soon. I don't know if it's days, weeks, but it seems to me it's going to be days or weeks. But once that first domino falls, so many things are going to happen so quickly because of the energies that are coming through from the center of the universe and this 2012 phenomenon that we're all involved in. The earth changes, all this kind of stuff. Nothing negative, though. I don't want to put out as doom and gloom. It's all these things have to happen in order for us to reset within the cycle that we're in and to go in the positive because, quite frankly, we've been in a masculine energy that's controlling and domineering, and now these feminine energies are coming in and kind of, calming things down, making the change, and all the fear and the war and all the things we've dealt with over at least this lifetime, but I'm sure many others, are coming to an end. And I'm so happy. I'm so excited for people, but people need to look at it in a positive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if you want to, you can definitely get caught up into the whirlpool of doom and gloom, and but given the choice, and it's not an ignorant is bliss thing. I don't think it's an ignorance is bliss. I think it's more of a, yes, you can be aware of the dangers, but don't live in the dangers.
Right.
Don't set up your home there. You put your house on a hill where a flood won't bother it.
Well, like I said earlier, there are universal laws. Like, just because you're not afraid of something, don't mean that you should actively, like, in other words, like if there's a tree, you're not going to run your head, like don't run your face right into the tree because we are in this 3-dimensional world that has rules that you should abide by. And so I'm not saying go quit your job. Don't go jump in front of a semi because you're a powerful being.
Yep.
You have to have some common sense. But
don't test the theory of gravity by jumping up a building just because 0.1% of the time you'll just float, but the other 99.99999% of the time you will go splat.
Right. So, that's basically my message is, yes, there are a lot of things that will be happening. And quite frankly, a couple of years ago, I'd say we were in a 3-dimensional framework. And now I think we've shifted into a 4th-dimensional, but we're still living out the games because our thought becomes reality. We're still stuck in the 3-dimensional thought process. But I really think we're all going into a 5th dimension. Well, not all of us, some of us. I mean, that's another thing. Everybody's life path is their own, and we've all incarnated for various reasons, for various experiences. And so some of us are going to go to 4D. Some of us are going to go to 5D. Some of us may go to a very, very different solar system. Mm-hmm. They might go to a planet that's similar to this one to learn the lessons they need to learn. Because quite frankly, we are made in the image of God. And Jesus even said, if we want to go to biblical terms, he said, you will do these things and greater things. So I think that he was a master of his domain in the 3-dimensional framework. I mean, we only use 8 to 10% of our brain and 3% of our DNA. What if he knew how to turn all that up? I mean, I don't think it's such a far stretch to believe.
Yeah. I think we'll touch on this. This is interesting that you said that. I've often said on the show that the December 21st, 2012 Enigma, that I don't know what's happening. I have no idea. Maybe the I Ching, the Mayans, maybe, the 2012 movie scenario. I don't know. It can go either way or no way. I could wake up December 22nd, 2012, and go, pretty much nothing. Okay, move on. Or, events can lead up to something. I don't know. I don't have a ticker tape from the universe spelling everything out for me.
Right.
Giving me all the answers. Don't have that. I've been wanting that, by the way, for a very long time. I've always thought that the universe should give us ticker tapes and just spell everything out. Right. And I think that would be very handy and useful. But at least for me, it's not doing that. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I do look at the events and I do notice, and maybe it's just my circle of people around me and the people I talk to and the guests I talk to. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just in this alternative world that everybody goes, wow, the stuff that you're hearing on TV, that's all BS. The economic thing, it's all BS. It's all manufactured. And maybe the circle of people figuring all that stuff out is a lot bigger than I think it is. And I'm going to lean that way because I think that's a positive outlook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think anybody knows. In fact, these higher dimensional beings that I was channeling and my friend was, they don't know because this has never been done before. This is a first in human history. And there's a tipping point that had to be reached. And the more people, you got to understand there's this consciousness field that's around the planet. And the more people that think about one thing at one time, it becomes the reality within that paradigm of people at that particular time. So we also have our own individual consciousness that's influenced or has been influenced through things like the media, your parents, your religion, your culture. So, but then it goes back to the rules of the dimension that you're in. But talking about the 2012 enigma, as you say, nobody knows what's going to happen exactly on that particular day, but we definitely know that we're in the change now. It's not going to happen in one instant. We're in the change now. People's consciousness is raising now. Things have to happen like the Earth, and when I say Earth changes, I look at the Earth, the planet, as the human body, as above, so below. So we're these little cells that are on the planet, just like we have little cells in our body. And we could either be white blood cells and good cells, or we could be cancer cells. And different parts of the planet have low vibratory frequencies, such as poverty and things like that. And just like the human body, whenever you have appendicitis, you have a surgeon go in and you cut it out. Well, the Earth does it in the natural way through hurricanes, tornadoes, and things like that. So when you see these types of things, she's just cleansing herself just like you would cleanse yourself of any dis-ease. And that's where the word disease comes from. There's a dis-ease somewhere on the body. And the best way that I can give you an analogy like as above, so below is the DNA. The DNA of our bodies has all the information in it that, it has more information than you can even imagine. Like super cute computers, it would take forever to figure all this thing out. But what I really want to say is if you took a liver cell, you could create a kidney just because the information is encoded within that particular cell, if you're a geneticist and if you know how to do it, of course. So when I say as above, so below, a lot of my research goes back to some of the earlier findings that I have found out that the whole is within all the parts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's holographic.
Exactly. So what I really think that we're in this three-dimensional awareness. We have these blinders on us because, quite frankly, if I knew that I was a God, a creator God, I wouldn't want to be here in dense 3D. If I could be in bliss somewhere, I'd be flying off right where I came from,
Right.
I think that we have, at least energetically, it appears that we have a template that is superimposed from a higher dimension down to this dimension. And a good example of this is when we have patients that come in and they have a above-knee amputation, and they feel toe pain, It's because energetically, their toe is still there. The physical mass, the part of their body that is a physical part, is gone. But they still perceive that toe as pain.
Right. Absolutely. It's interesting. I think I've spoken about this on the show before. We're getting to the point scientifically through our science, genetics and all of these other things, where if you've looked into ancient history and other cultures, they talk about the gods.
Right.
And when they talk about the gods, they're talking about, in many cases, at least in alternative research, they're talking about a non-human alien race coming down to the planet, messing with the indigenous life forms, and doing things to them to affect their biology.
Right. And that's true.
And we're at that point. We're there. I've talked, last week's guest was William Brown. He talked about as he's a geneticist, and he talked about this stuff.
Right.
And he said, we're at that point. We're at that point where we can do at least limited levels of work in those areas. And if we on the outside know this, can you imagine what the Black Ops programs know?
Right. Oh, yeah, because they're so many years ahead of what we know in technology.
And, of course, we've talked to Richard Dolan about a breakaway civilization. And I don't know 100% that that's the case. But it makes logical sense if you connect the dots.
Right.
That, of course, they would break away and want to do their own thing with their own rules.
Right. And
their own people, because who else are they going to talk to? Somebody in that sort of level, working with that sort of level, if they're working on platforms in space and all of these, what the mainstream media would call science fiction, has been science fact for quite some time now.
Well, today's magic is tomorrow's science.
Right, and if you imagine how far they are along in their development in these areas, it's in 1947 when we had the Roswell incident, and previous to that, I mean, they used to report about the UFOs in old Western, when the newspapers first came out, they'd see these weird events. You can go back into history. You can go back into ancient cultures talking about this thing. You can see it in the Bible talking about this sort of thing. Right. The Mahabharata, talks about it. The Vedas, you can go through that and you can see all of this information. We're now at the cusp of that point where we can start making these massive changes. Now, the question is, are we going to make those massive changes for the better of humanity, or are we going to flush it down the toilet?
Yeah. Well, we're notorious for screwing up everything that's around us. So hopefully, I don't want to be negative, but hopefully we're going to go in a positive state. And, one thing I like to say is just because we can't see it don't mean it don't exist. Within the visible spectrum of light, it's for lack of a better way of doing this on the air, if you can just picture a roller, 12 inches, right in the center, about a quarter inch of that is what we can see physically with our human eye. On, say, the right side, there's X-rays and gamma rays. On the left side, there's the microwaves and radio waves and infrared. So just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right. And William, just to go back to him for a minute, was talking about the DNA as being a receiver and a transmitter.
Right.
And the true purpose of DNA has not been fully utilized, which is why they can say something like 97% of DNA is junk DNA.
Right.
Whereas he says, no, 100% of DNA is absolutely useful. You just haven't got the science to figure it out yet.
Exactly. And that was my next point. The same thing as what you're saying. I'm trying to parallel. Just because you can't see it don't mean it don't exist. I mean, the optical telescope was invented somewhere around 1590. And now all of a sudden we can see microorganisms. Well, guess what? They've always been around. Just because we couldn't see them didn't mean they didn't exist. And it's the same with DNA. It's 97% junk. Well, just because we're not intelligent enough to know what the rest are for, that doesn't mean it's junk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interesting. I wanted to cover the pharmaceutical industry and vaccinations. I have that on my list. It's right here. But, of course, we were rambling on so much, we didn't get to cover it. So I'm going to quickly cover that. What are your thoughts on the pharmaceutical industry and the current state of the medical industry?
Oh, my gosh. I get asked this a lot, of course, because of what I do. Quite frankly, as we said earlier about the pharmaceutical companies and who does the funding of the research that's being put out, I mean, they're a multi-billion or maybe trillion-dollar organization. And they're influential in what people prescribe and what they don't. And, you know, some of the things that we're finding, or at least speculating in mainstream medicine, you know, all of a sudden we're getting autism, it's like running rampant now. And what is this from? It's been speculated that is it from the vaccinations? I don't know. I don't have any proof about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you just got to wonder some of the things that have, sure, we got rid of some things, but we also developed some things.
Also, as a species, we've changed the way we do things slowly over time. I mean, when a lot of the viruses went away, they do the research and they say, well, it was the invention of this vaccine that fixed that. When you look into the history, though, the problem was already on the decline, and it coincided with the changing of the way we handled sewage, sanitary ways of doing things, and it was lifestyle changes more so than an invention of a drug.
This is true, but one other thing to add to that, and I agree with you 100%, when we started talking about thought becomes reality before, this is another reason why I have to give my patients the option or the choice. So do you believe in alternative medicine or do you believe in traditional medicine? Because if a person comes in and you give them an injection or say a flu injection, if they wholeheartedly believe that that is going to keep them from getting the flu, then guess what? It will. So that's how powerful of a being that we are, and it will supersede the sickness and the illness, the side effects that may or may not come with it. So some of what we talked about earlier, the placebo effect, has a lot to do with the changes and the things that we experience today as a change, like you say, gradually.
Right, and the understanding of our science may change the way we affect things on those levels. Like as science increases and they go, wow, you know, DNA is unusual and has these unusual properties, that may reflect in the medical industry to a larger and larger and larger degree, whereas maybe in 50 years we look back on this time and go, woo, boy.
Yeah, and you know, it's so funny because we do that now. We look back and just look at our technology, how it's grown just in the past 50, 100 years. And then, you know, we don't think that there's anybody out there other than ourselves, but we know the Hubble telescope can look out hundreds of billions of, light years. And it's hard for us to even put that into perspective because what is a light year? You know, the speed of light,
Yep.
In 1 second, it takes the speed of light. The light will go around this planet, and this planet is huge. It'll go around this planet 7 times in 1 second. So whenever this Hubble telescope goes out and looks out even 1 light year, how far is that? And how many galaxies? I mean, there's 100 billion galaxies out there. So
yeah,
what if
it's just what we can see?
Yes, with our visible or the visible light, with our spectrum of light that we can see with our human eyes. But just what if one of those solar systems has one planet that's 1,000, maybe even 200 years in advancement of technology than what we have? Look what we did in 100 years. Can you imagine how advanced the technology would possibly be?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as a planetary society, we're moving as a planetary society, and we've got a ways to go because I don't think there should be starving people anywhere on the planet.
I agree.
I just don't think that should happen, and I think it behooves people to want to look out for other people, and I think intrinsically that is the case. But I think a lot of these things have been set in place to divide people. And you can go down the list. You can go down the list from economically, spiritual outlook, keep them busy, keep them entertained. If you keep people busy and keep them entertained, they won't worry about what's happening. Or they'll do these charity movements that become corrupted over time, and the guys at the top all take the money, and very little of it actually gets to the poor people.
Yeah.
And,
you definitely a divide and conquer type of a thing.
And if we can get beyond that as a planetary society,
right,
that's going to be a step. When you have enough people crying out, like you have economically with people all over the world, that's been happening for the past year, with the, what's happening in Greece, right now, and what's happening with the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement haven't gone away. They just got hit with winter.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's going to stop. It's going to start back up again when it's the nicer weather. It's already, there's already stuff happening. But these are events that are happening that are escalating. And while all that's happening, you still have the industrialists and the corporations doing their thing, which usually ends up to be above the profit margin, is what's important. And the council of grandmother outlook would be what's for the people is important.
Exactly.
So somehow we've got to mesh that as a planetary society to, if you want to say evolve, then, consciously evolve as a planetary society to the next stage. And I think that's important.
No, absolutely. I mean, not only has our technology increased, but our awareness, and just by the internet alone, we can reach people like this. You're in Canada, I'm in America, and you're on the East Coast of,
yeah, I'm in Ontario.
Yeah, and so I'm in New Mexico. So just through the technology, it is bringing people together in a positive way. I mean, of course, the internet has some negative features if you want to look at it that way, and it can be run in, negative circles. But if you align yourself with the positive aspects of it and use it for good, I mean, look what we're doing here today.
Absolutely. Okay, vaccinations. Let's cover vaccinations. What are your opinions on vaccinations?
Well, personally or medically?
Personally.
I can tell you this. I haven't had a flu shot. I won't get one. I won't get a pneumovax shot. I won't get any other shot. I won't even get a tetanus shot anymore.
Okay.
Years ago I would have, and I have.
I'm not asking as a doctor. I'm just saying personally, if a new scare came up, a new virus scare, would you run out and grab and shove thimerosal through your system?
I would. I'm going to try to do everything in my own power to take care of it myself, either through meditation, energy healing, natural, like whether it be herbs or teas or anything that's naturally occurring from the earth. Put it that way. I would rather. I'm definitely not going to get no immunization. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's just your personal outlook, which you're allowed to have as a person and a doctor. You're allowed to choose what you're going to do with your body. Now, what your patients might want to do is a completely separate thing.
Right, and I offer them, and I tell them, I'm like, look, what do you think? Because again, thought becomes reality. So, do you think that you need this? That's the first question, without even influencing them in any way. I'm like, well, do you think you need it? Do you think this is helpful to you? And if they say yes, then you know what? It's standard of care, and it's something that it's their choice, and it should always be the patient's choice. That's another thing that I like to speak about is, a lot of people allow the practitioner, the doctor, whoever, to take the responsibility for them. And, who knows you best? You. You can't, you go in and, of course, to get help with knowing what is wrong with you in a three-dimensional way, yeah, you go in and you ask the physician, But you ask him for options, and then he shouldn't be the one that's saying, you do this or else you're out of my practice. The choice should ultimately be the patient's.
Right, and the options should be allowed.
Yeah.
But if you're going to a mainstream, let's call them mainstream doctor, then their only option might be to fill out a prescription, and that's where their buck would stop.
Right.
And no other. And so even if the people were willing to go with a natural cure, they wouldn't have the ability to do it because, the closed off box that they're in at that moment is the mainstream medical industry.
Right. And I think that, a lot of this is all going to change here over the next couple years. And at least, a lot of changes are going to happen this year, let alone the next couple. But, I really don't think that in the future, let's talk about, like, if we're in the now, yeah, it's still necessary because people believe in it and it's still helping. But in the future, everything's energy. Everything can be changed or manipulated in a healing sense. And you'll see in the future that we won't require pharmaceuticals or doctors or, each individual person can heal themselves.
Yeah, and I think in the past it was easier to shut down things that were more alternative, and like Raymond Rife, for example, that got sort of shut down, but there wasn't enough planetary connection.
Mm-hmm.
If there was enough planetary connection at that time and enough people learned about those sort of cures, it would have been unstoppable. With the internet as an example for global communication, it's almost like collective consciousness.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think
sorts of things would have more of an ability to happen, and I think the repression would be less successful. And I think as time goes on, that will be the case more and more and more, unless they shut down the internet.
Right.
Or regulate it in some way, which
right.
they're trying to do.
Right.
They're realizing that the way too much, free expression is going on, and they're, of course, calling it a terrorist threat.
Yeah, right.
Stuff. But, of course, we know that's just rhetoric, don't we?
Yep. And like you said, this internet, they didn't really expect or think that it was going to run wild like it did, and here it is. And it's really what it is an outlet for people to come together and learn and raise in vibratory frequency, not so much with the computer itself, because it's a mechanical device, but it gets you in touch with somebody who has a piece of the puzzle, if you will. And as you discuss certain things, it raises your awareness and therefore your consciousness and therefore your vibratory frequency. So, with people, and a majority, well, I don't want to say majority, a lot of people, I'll say, that go to the internet for information and for an outlet, whether it be radio shows or YouTube or whatever. There's a variety of ways to get the information, but it also raises the consciousness. As thousands of people watch these things, it's raising the vibratory frequency of the planet. And that's another reason, we didn't get into this, but a lot of human beings that came here at this time came here for several reasons. One, to help themselves in raising consciousness, help humanity get through this process that we're going through, and help the planet. I really believe that the planet is a sentient being just like we are. And she's going through this ascension process, and everything, the rocks, the plants, the animals, all of these things, including humanity, are all raising in consciousness and awareness. It's not just humanity. It's everything and everybody.
Right on. I'll go with that. Okay, well, wow, we've covered our whole 2 hours.
Yeah.
And this is normal. Time goes by. We just get talking about different subjects, and boom, 2 hours has gone by. So I'd like to thank you for being on the show. Quickly, I'd like for you to give your websites, your YouTube channel, and go over your radio show that's starting next Sunday.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My website, universaltalk.info, if there's anybody that wants to check out the archives. I'm not doing that show anymore, but all the information is still there. Also, a guiding light, Lite is how it's spelled, a guidinglight.com is my other website for meditations, and if anybody wants any healing work done or angel card readings. And then the radio show, you can find it through atw.com, I believe. Or, yeah, it's ATW Radio. And I'll have to give you the link for that. And
Yep, that's fine.
okay. So the radio show will start April 8th, as you said earlier. And my first guest will be Lisa M. Harrison. And from then, it'll be every Sunday, 7 p.m. live, so people can call in, and there's going to be a chat room and all that. And hopefully, it'll be more of the solution, as you say. I like that.
Yeah, more solution-based.
Yeah, and as far as the YouTube, it's under Universal Talking, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, great. I would like to thank you again for being on the show. I appreciate you taking your time and coming out and talking. You've made some major changes in your life. I mean, can you imagine? He had a practice with 3 offices running, people through it all the time, and he closes those down, sells his house, and moves to a different area of the country. I mean, that's unbelievable that you had enough faith to actually, do that.
Yeah, one of the things we didn't get into was all the material things that I had, all the goodies, the toys, the four-wheelers and snowmobiles and all that stuff. And as you raise in consciousness, you also find that you really don't need it. And it's so freeing to walk away from it. And even the big house and all the other stuff that comes with it and the office and the responsibility, you walk away from it and you find something that's better up ahead. As long as you believe in yourself and you have the skills. And a lot of my friends and family, again, they were like, what are you doing? Aren't you afraid? What are you going to do? Well, I've done construction for over 15, almost 20 years, and I also have a couple degrees, and I can practice family medicine, So it really wasn't a big stretch, but this is something that everybody should do, is they should believe in themselves, go within, live from the heart, not the head, try to raise your vibratory frequency as high as you can over the coming times. Things that are changing before you in the culture, in the community, in the world, look at it as a positive change. Find the blessings in it, anything and everything, and it'll be a smooth transition.
Well said, and more power to you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And if you ever want me back again, just give me a holler.
Sure, I think we could babble for hours. No problem. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.